Thank you so much. The casual tourist in Warsaw can encounter traces of Zamenhof and his main creation, the Esperanto language, wandering throughout the city. Coming here to the Polin Museum, you come across ulica Zamenhofa. In the city, there is also an Esperanto street, and a city bus shows Esperanto on its display, as that street is its last stop. But there are many Esperanto and Zamenhof streets in the world, so this is not what makes Warsaw unique. Following our imaginary tourist, who is fond of street art, we can take a tour to discover Warsaw murals. One of them portrays Zamenhof with an extensive bilingual Esperanto-Polish text, which can be found just outside here, around the corner in the Muranov metro station. Let's suppose that our imaginary tourist is fond of languages too, and she loves biking. She will certainly ask herself the following question: why does Warsaw public bike system have such a strange non-Polish name, Veturilo? You can now guess the answer. It is a word in Esperanto, meaning vehicle. If our imaginary tourist happens to read Polish or Esperanto, she could satisfy her legitimate curiosity about the topic by consulting a book that is a source of reliable information about the relation between Zamenhof and this city. In fact, the book entitled Zamenhof in Warsaw, published earlier this year, which is this one, which I have in my hand, appeared in 2 editions, the first in Polish and the second in Esperanto. The book guides one through the city in search of the many traces left by the Zamenhof family. Its author is Roman Doziński, a Polish journalist and Esperantist, who some years ago interviewed Louis Christophe Zaleski Zamenhof, the grandson of the inventor of Esperanto, whose life story is really remarkable. That interview, originally in Polish, was translated in several languages, including Esperanto. That is the original edition. Even if Ludwig Leiser was born in Białystok, he spent most of his life here in Warsaw, where he published the Unua Libro, first book, on July 1887. So, Warsaw can be considered the adopted home of Ludwig Leiser Zamenhof, and, of course, the cradle of Esperanto. UNESCO declared 2017 Zamenhof year, being the 100th anniversary of his death, which transpired here in Warsaw, where Zamenhof's grave is also located. The UNESCO decision was made after a proposal by Poland, with the support of Germany and Slovakia. It is worth reading an extract of the original document motivating this important symbolic decision. Quote, in 1887, he, Zamenhof, published a textbook in Russian, the International Tongue, Preface and Complete Method, under the pseudonym Doctoro Esperanto. The pseudonym means the doctor who hopes, and has caught on as the name of the language. In the same year, the textbook was published in Polish, French, German, and English. The first Esperanto clubs started to come into being, and the advantages of the language were recognized by linguists too. In 1905, in Boulogne-sur-Mer, France, the first World Congress of Esperanto took place. While staying in France, Zamenhof was decorated with the National Order of the Legion of Honor. In 1906, Zamenhof published Humanitism, Homaranismo, which is the idea of the union of all the nations communicating in a common language. Zamenhof himself was the first to ask if it were possible for all people to speak the same language. For him, this was not a utopian dream, as it was for philosophers like René Descartes and Leibniz, but a concrete possibility. But Zamenhof was well aware that simply having a common language was not enough to make this idea a reality. This is an aspect seldom discussed in presentations on the Esperanto language. Nonetheless, it is extremely important in order to understand the whole phenomenon. Let me briefly explain this point in detail. Every language is a vehicle for a set of values held by the people who use it, in this case, the collection of the Esperanto speakers. And even an invented language like Esperanto is no exception in this sense. In other words, Esperanto is not only a language, but a culture represented by its artifacts, created by the Esperantists, the people who believe that using that language for one purpose or another is worth the time spent learning it. We are used to talking about a single Esperanto language ideology, but the variety of political and social ideas connected to this language justify the use of the word Esperantisms in the plural. According to Mark Fettes, a scholar who is currently the president of the most important association supporting the language, the Universal Esperanto Association, the way Esperanto speakers perceive their language faces a dilemma between two contrasting aspects. On one side, there is the Gemeinschaft, linked to tradition, kinship, rurality, while on the other side, there is the Gesellschaft, linked to modernity, individualism, and urbanness. The Esperanto Gemeinschaft aspect nurtures original poetry and prose, prepares theatrical pieces for performance at Esperanto conferences, and takes care of the concert performed by the latest Esperanto rock band. The Esperanto Gesellschaft aspect is more concerned with the recognition of the language and its value by external institutions, such as the UNESCO declaration we saw above, which is only the last of a rather long list, or the Polish Parliament resolution in memory of Zamenhof, adopted on the 7th of April 2017. If we consider the fact that Esperanto is spoken by a minority scattered around the world, and that at the same time it has an international character by definition, the Esperanto culture has almost literally created a cosmopolitan global village. Esperanto speakers form a special bond, as if they belonged to the same little village, while, on the other hand, they also belong to the society where they normally live. There is no stable proper monolingual Esperanto territory, such as possessed by the great cultural languages of Europe, such as Polish in Poland, or Italian in Italy, Ticino, Switzerland, San Marino, and the Vatican. Although Esperanto cities and microstates exist or existed in the history of this unique human phenomenon, Esperanto land mainly lives in the hearts of the Esperanto speakers. Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft are two aspects found in any living language used by a community of speakers. The Gemeinschaft aspect represents the language as a barrier, allowing speakers to identify themselves as a group, excluding non-speakers. In contrast, the Gesellschaft represents the language as a bridge, so that outsiders can learn it as a second language, following the advice that learning a language means gaining access to a new way to look at the world through new lenses. This paradox is unavoidable, and Esperanto is no exception in this case. In the case of Esperanto, Zamenhof was concerned with both of these aspects since its launch. And this fact is one of the main factors that enabled Esperanto to survive 2 world wars and the challenges faced by the numerous rival projects proposed for playing the role of the international auxiliary language, such as Ido or Interlingua, which are now nothing more than curiosities for specialists and aficionados. Almost all proponents of Esperanto's rivals, a nice expression by the Spanish sociologist Roberto Garvia, were concerned only with the Gemeinschaft aspect. They proposed language projects only for purely utilitarian purposes, which users could not easily identify themselves with. In contrast, Zamenhof imbued his Lingvo Internacia, international language in Esperanto, with his own character, coming from his life experience of being an Ashkenazi Jew living in a ghetto. Esther Shore once expressed the relation between Zamenshov's Jewishness and his language with a wonderful metaphor, which I would like now to quote. The history of Esperanto is a series of Chinese boxes with a Jewish ghost inside. In a very famous private letter written in Russian to a friend of his, Nikolai Borovko, he recalls his early years in Białystok, where there were 4 distinct communities sharing the city: the Jews, the Roman Catholic Poles, the Orthodox Russians, and the Lutheran Germans. These 4 peoples were divided by languages and religions that defined their national identities. The life project of the young Leja was to build 2 bridges, a linguistic one, which will eventually be the Esperanto language, and a monotheistic religion. The second project for him, more important than the first one, was first called Hilalism, and later Homaranismo, an Esperanto word already seen above in the UNESCO document. The basic idea of Homaranismo was to build a bridge between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam on the basis of their common roots. The first people to profit from that bridge, in Zamenhof's mind, should have been the Jewish people. The word Homaranismo is difficult to translate in any language, being so specifically linked with Zamenhof's Weltanschauung, his vision of the world. So I have decided not to translate it. While Esperanto enjoyed a relative success after its successful launch in France in 1905, the destiny of Zamenhof's religious project was already clear. Only once Zamenhof was convinced to give an interview in English to the Reverend Isidore Harris for the journal The Jewish Chronicle. Let's look at an extract of that interview published in 1907, where Zamenhof clarifies his project and why it was no longer his main concern. Inasmuch as all Jews have a history in common and the peoples will have nothing to do with it, we ought to beware of calling ourselves Russians, Germans, etc., and we should call ourselves Jews by nationality. Always remembering that, unlike other nationalities, ours is neither local nor ethnological, but only ideal. It stands to reason that we cannot reform the whole Jewish people at one step. So we ought to create in Judaism a normal sect and strive to bring it about that sect may come in course of time, say after 100 or 150 years, to include the whole Jewish people. We should then become a powerful group. Nay, more, we should be in position to conquer the civilized world with our ideas, as the Christians have hitherto succeeded in doing, though they only commenced by being a small Jewish body. Instead of being absorbed by the Christian world, we should absorb them. But the Russian Jews had not the courage to help me in organizing such a sect as I contemplated. There is a Russian proverb that says, "One man in a camp does not make a soldier." So I have long since abandoned my scheme as unworkable and my efforts are now devoted to the cognate object of furthering the movement which I have called Esperantism." Unquote. In truth, Zamenhof never forgot Homaranismo, but after year 1900, he devoted more time and energy to Esperanto, as he wanted to guarantee the language a secure life, even without his charismatic presence. His concerns were well placed, because the accidents of history brought Esperanto into a cultural milieu where his religious proposal was completely unacceptable. In fact, whereas before the year 1900, the majority of Esperantists came from Tsarist Russia, and Jewish Esperantists had a considerable presence, in the early days of the past century, it was the French-speaking world that would take the lead of the Esperanto movement, with Catholics strongly represented. Moreover, in 1905, public opinion in France was divided because of the Affaire Dreyfus, which fueled anti-Semitism, just when the Esperantists were organizing their first World Esperanto Congress, which took place in Boulogne-sur-Mer, a small French town facing the Channel. This is why Zamenhof allowed himself to be referred to as a Polish oculist in the press of his time, in modern terms, ophthalmologist, without mentioning his Jewishness. Nowadays, we are free to say that Ludwig Leger Zamenhof was a son of Polish soil, but not Polish. Once, he identified himself as a Rusujano, an Esperanto word meaning Russian citizen, implying that he was not Russian, which in Esperanto would have simply been Russo. Having said that, it is not surprising that what he said in that first World Esperanto Congress in 1905. Please allow me to read an extract in the Esperanto original. Then I will read this English translation, while the Polish interpreters will translate into Polish. En nia conveno ne existas nazioi fortai cae malfortai, privilegiitai cae semprivilegiai, nenio humiligas, nenio singenas. Ni ciui staras sur fundamento neutrala, ni ciui estas plene egal raitai. Nenio humiligas, nenio singenas, ni ciui sentas nin kiel membroi de unu nazio, kiel membroi de unu familio. Kai la unuan foion en la homa historio, ni, membroi de la plei malsamai popoloi, staras unu apud la alia, ne kiel fremduloi, ne kiel concurantoi, sed kiel fratoi, kiui, ne altrudante unu l'alia sian lingvon, comprenas sin reciproce, ne suspectas unu l'alian, pro mallumo ili individanta, amas sin reciproce, cae premas al si reciproce la manoin. Ne hipocrite, kiel alinaziano al aliazinano, sed sincere, homo al homo. Ni consciu bone la tutan gravezon de la hodiaua tago, char hodiau inter la gast amai muroi de Bulogno sur maro convenis ne Franzoi cun Angloi, ne Russoi cun Poloi, sed homoi cun homoi. Benata estu la tago, cae grandai, cae glorai estu giai sequoi. In our meeting, there are no strong and weak nations, privileged and disadvantaged. Nobody is forced to humiliate himself. Nobody has to worry. We all stand on a neutral ground. We all are fully equal in rights. Nobody is forced to humiliate himself. Nobody has to worry. We all feel as if we are members of a single nation, as members of one family. And for the first time in human history, we, members of the most different peoples, stand aside one another, not as strangers, not as rivals, but as brothers, who are not pushing their language onto one another, and so they understand each other, are not suspicious of one another because of the darkness that divides them, but love each other and shake hands, not hypocritically, as members of different nations do, but sincerely, human beings with human beings. We know well the great importance of today, because today, within the hospital walls of Boulogne-sur-Mer, it is not Frenchmen who have convened with Englishmen, nor Russians with Poles, but human beings with human beings. Blessed shall be this day, and full of glory its consequences. Unquote. The importance of that moment cannot be overestimated. Esperanto proved to be a workable language for everyday oral communication, but also suitable for formal contexts, both oral and written. After that moment, we can finally answer yes to our general question. Yes, it is possible for all people to speak the same neutral language. Neutral meaning respecting each other's diversities without imposing one's own language onto others. Spirituality always plays the major role in Zamenhof's thinking. He closed his speech reading a poem entitled Pregio sub la verda standardo, Prayer Beneath the Green Banner. This poem is generally considered a good summary of the inner spirituality inherent to Esperanto, the so-called interna ideo, an internal idea of Esperanto. I will read it in Esperanto and then read a poetic translation in English by Major Bolton, one of the most beloved Esperanto poets ever. Al vi, ho potenza sen corpa mistero, fortego la mondo reganta, al vi, granda fonto del amo cae vero, cae fonto de vivo constanta, al vi, qui un ciui malsame presentas, sed ciui egale en coro vincentas, al vi, quiu creas, al vi, quiu regias, hodiau ni pregias. Al vi, ni ne venas cum credo nazia, cum dogmoi de blinda fervoro, silentas nun cio disput religia, cae regas nun credo decoro. Cum gi, quiu estas ce ciui egala, cum gi la plei vera sentrudo batala, ni staras nun, filoi del tuta homaro, ce vi altaro. Homaron vi creis perfecte cae bele, se gis individis batale. Popolo popolon attacas cruele, frat fraton attacas sciacale. Ho, quiu ein estas vi forto mistera, auscultu la vocion del pregio sincera, redonu la pazon alla infanaro del granda homaro. Ni juris labori, ni juris batali, por reunigi il homaron. Subtenun in forto, ne lassun in fali, sed lassun in venci la baron. Donatsu vi benon al nia laboro, donatsu vi forton al nia fervoro. Che ciam ni contrao attacoi sovagiai, ninteno curagiai. La verdan standardon tre alte ni tenos, gisignas la bonon cae belon, la forto mistera del mondo nin benos, cae nian atingos ni celon. Ni inter popoloi la muro in detruos, cae ili ec cracos, cae ili ec bruos, cae falos por ciam, cae amo cae vero, ec regos sur tero. To thee, O mysterious bodiless force, O power of the world all-controlling, to thee, source of love and of truth, and the source of life in its endless unrolling, whom each may conceive in his way in his mind, but the same in his heart in his feelings shall find. To thee, the Creator, to thee holding sway, to thee now we pray. We turn to thee now with no creed of estate, with no dogmas to keep us apart. Blind zeal now is hushed, the fanatic hate. Now our faith is the faith of the heart. With this truest faith, this unforced faith and free, which all feel alike, we are turning to thee. We stand now, the sons of the whole human race, in thy holy place. Thy creation was perfect and lovely, but men are divided and war on each other. Now peoples rend people like beasts in a den. Now brother makes war on his brother. Mysterious power, whatever thou art, O hear now our prayer, our true prayer from the heart. O grant us thy peace, O give peace once again to the children of men. We are sworn to strive on, we are sworn to the fight, till mankind is as one. O sustain us, O let us not fall, but be with us, O might. Let no walls of division restrain us. Mysterious power, now bless our endeavor, now strengthen our ardor, let us forever. Whoever attacks us, whoever they rave, be steadfast and brave. We will hold our green banner on high now unfurled, a symbol of goodness and blessed in our task by the mystery ruling the world. We shall come to the end of our quest. The walls that divide shall divide us no more. They shall crack, they shall crash, they shall fall with a roar. And love then, and truth shall, all walls overthrown, come into their own. Unquote. That moment, in 1905, was the establishment of miracle of Esperanto. That miracle still holds today. In fact, such a miracle is repeated every time two Esperanto speakers belonging to different nationalities and even religions meet. In 2015, la 100th Universala Congresso, the 100th World Esperanto Congress, was held in Lille, near Boulogne-sur-Mer, with almost 2,700 participants. But let's come back to the period of Esperanto pioneers, who defined the evolutionary lines of Esperanto and its ideology, sometimes in contrast with Zamenhof's view. In fact, the last stanza of the prayer was not recited by Zamenhof for reasons that will become clear in the following. The English translation is by Paul Gubbins, the late writer in Esperanto and English, and member of the Academy of Esperanto. Cunigiu la fratoi, plectigiu la manoi, antauen cum pacai armiloi, Cristanoi, Hebreoi, au Mahometanoi, niciui de di estas filoi. Niciam memoru pribondel homaro, cae malgrau malhelpoi, sen halto cae staro, al frata la celo ni iru obstine, antauen sen fine. Now onwards, all people lean forever hand in hand, your weapons of peace burnished brightly, from Islamite, Hebrew, or from Christian land, each born of the Father Almighty. We must never forget we serve man's highest coast. Whatever besets us, without let, without pause, together as brothers to our goal, we must press to certain success. Since the success of the first Congress in 1905 until World War I broke out in 1914, a consistent international community was forming around the two centers of the Esperanto movement, Geneva in Switzerland and Paris in France. The Swiss elite, led by Hector Hodler, Edmond Privat, and René de Saussure, the youngest brother of the more famous Ferdinand, stressed the importance of the Esperanto movement's political neutrality and its application in scientific and technological research, and they envisaged a worldwide network of delegates to offer services to Esperanto speakers, initially on an individual basis, and later on the basis of cultural centers, in a way similar to what happens nowadays with the British Council for the English language or the Alliance Française for French. For them, Esperanto should be a spiritual refuge for individuals who did not let themselves be guided nationality for their own life choices, Esperanto being a sort of red cross of the soul. On the other hand, the French leaders of the Esperanto movement, in particular Louis de Beaufort, the second founder of Esperanto, as Zamenhof's biographer Alexander Korzenkov once called him, stressed the utility of the language in commerce, diplomatic relations, and tourism. For them, the Esperanto movement should be structured along nationalities. His Société pour la propagation de l'Espéranto in France, Society for the Propagation of Esperanto, became the model of what later became the national societies, such as the modern Esperanto Nederland in the Netherlands or the Pola Esperanto Asocio here in Poland. It is clear that Zamenhof Homaranismo was closer to the Swiss view of Esperanto than to the French one. But in the end, it was the French view that won the ideological competition, and the mainstream Esperanto movement was eventually structured along national lines, in direct opposition of Zamenhof's Homaranismo. We have a clear proof of that in the following episode. In his time, as university student in Moscow, Zamenhof was a proto-Zionist. The establishment of the new state of Israel was a matter of intellectual discussion, though still not a political program. Zamenhof proposed establishing the future Israel not in Palestine, but on the borders of the Mississippi River, still uninhabited then, with Yiddish as the official state language. His model was the Mormons, who had already founded a state, Utah, within the United States of America, maintaining their religion and culture. As we all know, the path of the foundation of Israel took a different direction. In 1914, just before the beginning of the World War I, the Jewish Esperantists were about to found a World Jewish Esperanto Association, in Esperanto, Tutmonda Esperantista Hebrea Asocio. They asked Zamenhof's advice and offered him the honorary presidency. He refused the offer and suggested that they adopt Esperanto and Yiddish as working languages, notably not Hebrew, whose revival was well established then, after more than a generation of use. It was not an easy journey for Zamenhof to distance himself from the Jewish people in this way. His motivation behind turning down the honorary position rightly remained famous. Let me first read the original quotation in Esperanto, followed by the translation in English, as I did before. Laŭ miaj konvinkoj, mi estas homarano, kaj mi ne povas ligi kun la celado kaj idealoj de speciala gento aŭ religio. Estas vero, che la nazionalismo della gentoi prematai, kiel natura sin defenda reago, estas multe pli pardoninda ol la nazionalismo de gentoi premantai. Sed, se la nazionalismo della fortuloi estas nenobla, la nazionalismo della malfortuloi estas neprudenta. Ambau nascas cae subtenas unu la lian, cae presentas eraran rondon de malfelicioi, el kiui la homaro neniam eliros, se ciui el ni ne oferos sian grupan mem amon, cae ne penos starigi sur grundo tute neutrala. According to my beliefs, I am a homaranist, and I cannot bind myself to the purposes and ideals of a particular people or religion. It is true that the nationalism of a repressed people as a natural defensive reaction is much more forgivable than the nationalism of oppressing peoples. But if the nationalism of the strong is ignoble, the nationalism of the weak is unwise. The two give birth to and nurture each other and present an erring circle of unhappiness from which humanity will never escape unless all of us sacrifice our own group pride and struggle to stand on completely neutral ground." End quote. In spite of the zeitgeist, the spirit of his time, Zamenhof did not believe in defining people ushering the romantic idea of one nation, one land, one blood, one religion, taking for granted the Westphalian model assumption that nation-states are naturally monolingual and linguistically homogeneous. This assumption is obviously wrong, even if we tend to forget it. In 2017, there are 193 countries in the world that are member states of the United Nations, plus 2 countries which are non-member states, the Vatican and the State of Palestine. According to Ethnologue, there are 7,099 living languages today, a third of them being severely endangered. A one-to-one language country mapping will require 7,099 countries, which is absurd. It is clear that the Westphalian model is factually wrong. Normally, in every country of the world, there is more than one language community. Zamenhof was well aware of this reality. According to him, there was only one way to prevent war due to linguistic and religious differences. His last public statement was published bilingually in Esperanto and English in The British Esperantist in 1915. That statement as an open letter to diplomats who should reconstruct Europe after the end of the First World War. Do take note of the year, 1915. I want to read a short extract from the English translation published at that time. Quote, "Will you begin simply to remake and patch up the map of Europe? Will you simply decide that a territory must belong to the nation X and a territory B to the nation Y? True, such work you will have to do, but it must be only an insignificant portion of your work. Take care that the readjustment of the map does not become the whole substance of your work, for then your labors will remain valueless, and the huge blood sacrifices offered up by mankind will remain of no avail. It would be best if, instead of various large and small European states, we should someday have proportionally and geographically arranged United States of Europe." End quote. Zamenhof will die 2 years later. His legacy and heritage lives through the Esperanto community of practice, made by Jewish and non-Jewish people alike, not only in Europe, but in many other parts of the world, notably the Far East, especially China, Japan, and South Korea, and the Americas, in particular Brazil, Canada, and the United States. Esperanto speakers have developed the Esperanto language through the production of original cultural artifacts, and they continue to develop it today. The long poem La infana raso, the infant race, authored by William Ode and published in 1956, is generally considered its most important and influential result. Born in Scotland, William Ode, who passed away in 2006, decided to write his poems in Esperanto after his experience in World War II as Spitfire airplane pilot. His sentiments towards humanity are not unlike Zamenhof's, but he expresses them with another poetic language, European modernism. Every trace of fresh hope still found in Zamenhof's prayer vanishes. So the question is, why writing in Esperanto? Was Zamenhof right or wrong in his hopes? I won't answer these questions. I prefer to let Old's voice talk through his poetry. The English translation is by Giver Mackay, an Esperantist also involved into the maintenance of the Gaelic language in Scotland. Dek ok, ne estas fido nur, subtenas factoi. Lingvo estas socia fenomeno, creaĵo de sociaj intertraktoj, kaj ĝin modifas la ŝanĝiĝa sceno. L'epoko ne maturas, sed bezonon jam sentas kelkaj, kaj bezono trovas sian rimedon, la precizan konon alprenas. Kiu volas, tiu povas. Kaj dum existos la bezon, existos la esprimilo, ne por la futuro, ne tamen eble ankaŭ mi asistos. Ĝi estis revo pela kaj auguro. Li sciis compreneble post centiaroi ars longa. Ho, sed vita estas brevis. Gi dauras ticon de la oculharoi, cae gi existas nur se oni revis. La revo estas cio, cae coraggio, char revas nur la coragiul unica. Perdigas mil cae mil pro la chantaggio del ciutaga mora hermetica. Li sciis, compreneble, cae li fidis, cae per la fido facte movis monton. Miraclo? Ne! Factoroi coincidis, cae frua nuno nascis la estonton. Post gi ne estis plu la sama, sorto compensa del pelatoi cae stranguloi, la sola lasta spito contra un morto. La mal proxima graco de clanguloi. Nur tion li ne sciis, en mallumai tagoi de Varsovio dum milita, sed tro malfrue estas, en cruzumai horoi, bedauri pri la cub jetita. Factoroi coincidis, exemple, la proverbaro. La hazardo trafis de tale, certe, cae fin fine simple, cae 16 per messagioin paragrafis. Cae, rigor vite ciam gin minacas, sed ne dum gin besonas societo. Cio contenton al postul donacas, nestas ludo por la cabineto. Cio nascigis en la familioi, en milionae tribai comunumoi, cae confandigas trans periferioi, crescantai pro productoi, cae consumoi. Atingos unuetson, malaperos neniam nia orfa idiomo, ciu yes, au ne, la mondon gi conqueros, dum volas comprenigi hom cum homo. Presca utimige, sen utila iconoi, la hom naturo estas origine, ale aiacta, passis fanfaronoi, ne pras la voion iri jam obstine. 18. It is not only faith. Facts bear this out. Language and interchange machine, by social contact brought about, is altered by the changing scene. Our age is not mature, but need is felt by some who find a plan, or answer and adopt with speed up knowledge. He who wishes can. And while the need exists, the way, not for the future, by design also exists. Perhaps I will play a part, a driving dream and sign. He knew after 50 years, ars longa, yes, but vitas brevis, it lasts as long as fleeting tears and dreamless lies like snow on navies. The dream is everything, and boldness, for only valiant hearts have dreams. Many are lost, blackmail, life's coldness, and every day's hermetic schemes. He knew, of course, a faithful mind, and by his faith he moved the mountains. A miracle? Factors combined to make a trickle through these mountains. Nothing remained the same, and faith unbending that can console obsessive minds and cranks, the only final challenge to life's ending. The distant crack of tanks on river banks. And in the hard dark days in wartime Warsaw, he did not know this, neither that would last. It is too late to curse one's cross, and more so to have regrets when once the die is cast. The factors coincide, for example the proverbaro, and, by happy chance, concise and certain, and above all simple, the 16 rules permitting free advance. And rigor vitae, did it threaten ever? Not while required by society, whatever may its demand, and such endeavor is not a game played out in privacy. Whatever comes to be within the family, within 1 million tribes and groups that function, consolidating crossing tribal limits, increasing by production and consumption, brings unity. And this, our often told, will never disappear spite bar or ban, whether or not he conquer the world over, while man seeks understanding still with man. Almost frightening, useless knowledge, human nature found innately, ala iacta, boasting over, we must go on obstinately. Before leaving the room, there are some people I would like to thank. First, all the people working here at POLIN, and in particular our Polish interpreters, and the two Joannas, who did a wonderful job at organizing the workshop and this special public event. Second, all my colleagues who helped me in making these events in honor of Zamenhof possible, coming here, sometimes from very far away. Thank you. Last but not least, my finest advanced student of interlinguistics, Nicola Ruggero, member of the Literature Academy of Esperanto. Nicola was the perfect sparring partner in discussing the content and style of this public lecture. In particular, he found the Polish translation of the poems I used. And for that, I also thank Przemysław Jewczybowski. Of course, all ideas and opinions expressed here are mine, and I take full responsibility for them. Thank you for your attention. Dankon pro vi atento. Dziękuję za uwagę.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Mi pensas que Esperanto estas tre grava lingvo, ne estas tre malfacila, estas tre logika, kaj oni povas tre rapide lerni ĝin, sed oni bezonas havi bonajn instruistojn.
Okay. I will translate from Esperanto then. So, I think that Esperanto is an easy language to learn and a regular language, but we need good teachers.
Ĉar oni instruas Esperanton simile kiel la anglan aŭ alia lingvon. Kaj tiu lingvo havas alian strukturon, tre logikan, kaj oni lernu ne por parkerigi la frazojn, ĉar oni ne parolas per ne propraj frazoj, sed per propraj frazoj. Kaj propraj frazoj oni devas konstrui sufiĉe rapide post komenco de la lernado.
Okay. I think that the structure of the Esperanto language is really logic, and so in general Esperanto is thought as if it were another language like English or French, in remembering sentences as such. But we have to teach it with proper phrases and sentences. That means with a lively language. Kaj la demando, and the question is? Ĉu ĉio?
En nia Esperantujo malmultaj personoj interesiĝas fakte pri instruado, pri didaktiko de la lingvo Esperanto, ĉefe pri interlingvistiko, sed ne nur por aferoj de didaktikaj kaj instruado. Oni malbone instruas Esperanton.
In general, among Esperanto speakers, Esperanto is not taught well, and then I lost the thing. And in particular, it's not interlinguistics is not taught, and they're not interested in language acquisition methods, and so it is taught badly. Well, I can answer to that. Mi povas responderli. The first answer is that it is not always the case, ne ĉiam estas tiel. Sometimes Esperanto is very well taught, for example, by me. Kelkfoje ĝi estis tre bone instruita, ekzemple fare de mi. Oh, okay, I'm a bit joking. Mi scherzas iomete. The point is that you are right in saying that the Esperanto community sometimes does not exploit the Esperanto culture. Vi pravas dirante che foje esperantistoj ne uzas la kulturon dum la instruado. And we can change that as Esperanto speakers. Ni povas ŝanĝi tion kiel Esperanto parolantoj. This is our responsibility. Tio estas nia respondeco.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is about the title. You said, is it possible for all people to speak the same language? And so, what's the answer? Are you optimistic about the future of Esperanto? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. Well, as I told during the presentation, since 1905 we have a proof that it is possible. So it's already reality. How much it will spread? Well, if we take William Old's words, our orphan language will never disappear, whether or not it conquer the world over. And I believe in that. I believe that there will be a future of Esperanto, whether it will be acknowledged by the non-Esperanto speakers. This is related with the concepts I put in the first part with Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. We will always have a Gemeinschaft, a community, because Esperanto attracts people who need it, independently of the Gesellschaft, of the society.
If I can have a question, excuse me, because as we can see, the language is still spoken, and and so are there any estimates how many people actually use it on the everyday basis?
Well, this is the common question that always come. Well, I can answer with another question. Are there estimates of Yiddish speakers around the world?
Well, I think there are actually.
There are, yeah, but there are not precise figures. So, first, it is difficult to answer because there is no state, as I told before. There are no monolingual speakers, and so that's the first point. You asked about active users. We can assume that if someone belongs to at least one Esperanto association, it has some common of the language because he pays a fee. We can assume that, okay? If you calculate today's numbers of Esperantists, so people who are members, the figures can be between 10,000 and 20,000. So this is the active group. Inside, there is a smaller group of Esperanto family speakers, 1,000 people around the world. And of course, if we want to know how many people attend a class, the figures are much more larger. In last couple of years, there was a very successful course in the internet through a very successful app, and I will not mention the name for copyright reasons, okay, but it had more than 1 million people in less than 2 years, which is remarkable, from English and Spanish. So the smartphones are not the future of Esperanto, they are the present.
So, the paradox is that we are talking now about Esperanto as a universal language in a language which is not considered universal, but it's lingua franca, and we are communicating now in English. So is there a conflict between Esperanto and English among Esperantists? How do you see this as a competition, as a kind of conflict, or how do you perceive this conflict of Esperanto and English? Because English, it seems to take the place of a universal language of communication, even if we do not acknowledge it as a universal language.
Such questions are often raised, and there is no problem in answering them. So at first, I contest the use of universal language. Zamenhof called lingua internazia, international language, which is different. It's very different. Okay? It's very different because universal language was used by philosophical language proposed by Descartes and Leibniz. So it's another story. So first, terminology. Second, I contest the use of lingua franca because English is not free. English belongs to the native speakers of English. English can become free if we have a holocaust of native speakers of English, which of course I say here very paradoxically. Okay? So that's the second point. So I tried to present the fact that Esperanto has a different role. Okay? And for some Esperantists there is this competition, but for others there is not. If you follow the poem by William Auld, I don't think he was especially against the official or de facto international language English. But being a Scottish, so he could write only in English, but because of the war he chose the Esperanto. So, okay, it's not, he has not fulfilled the dream of Zamenhof in one sense, but who cares?
I'm going to speak in English. I was wondering, because I didn't really know about that idea of Esperanto, like there was that idea before Esperantism, which was the, can you repeat that?
Homaranismo.
Exactly. And I understand that it was this idea about bringing religions together. So my question is, actually, linking it back to that idea, how many loanwords does Esperanto take from languages such as Arabic to make it attractive to people with that background?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for that question. Very few. That's the answer. Yes, that's true. Maybe you remember that I said that outside Europe there is the Far East and the Americas. I didn't mention the Arabic-speaking countries. Why? It's very simple. The Arabic-speaking countries have Arabic. They do not need Esperanto. If we have a bit of fantasy and we think of a different parallel story of Europe, and we will have not dropped Latin, maybe Esperanto will never existed. All this struggle of international auxiliary languages, as international auxiliary languages, as Esperanto and the other rivals that failed, came out in Europe. So you are perfectly right. And so there is a follow-up of that. Esperanto is not neutral in an absolute sense, linguistic sense, but it is impossible. If you want to have a neutral language between 7,000 living languages, no man in the world knows 7,000 languages to have a statistically balanced language. It's impossible. And of course, Zamenhof has his idea of internationality and his background. So maybe you have noticed that there are some similarities with Yiddish, some structures. The pronunciation is a bit like, let's say, a bit basically Latin spoken by Slavs sometimes, or something like that, okay? So that's right. That's right. It's not by chance that he envisioned as a political program for Esperanto United States of Europe, not United States of world or something like that. So thank you. That's a very interesting question. Seldom raised, I should say.
And just to maybe to comment on this one also, because you said, of course, English cannot really function as such a language, because it belongs to like several nations. It's the English-speaking world. But on the other hand, like for Europe, to make it a European English, I mean, that's a different sort of idea to think of it as another variety that is now actually coming up. You know, that we have new words that we might use. Like, I'm from Germany, basically. Okay. We use handy, which is an English word.
Yes.
And it has established as a word for telephone, for smartphone, or for cell phone. So it is changing now. And we speak, like, in Europe, we speak many different Englishes. And they would make up something like a European English. So I still see that challenge between English and Esperanto as well.
Well, that's very interesting what you say. There is also parking, which is not car park, which is spread around Europe. There are a lot of studies about that, and they focus on phonetic reduction. For example, the sound the or lexicon. Sometimes we speak about Brussels jargon in European documents because the English of the bureaucrats is not British and it's not American. That's also true. Having said that, it is a matter of policy, language policy and planning. So it is possible to carve a European English, but you said rightly that we speak a lot of varieties. I mean, I live and work in the Netherlands and in Italy. I can assure to you that Dutchglish and Itaglish are two different varieties in many senses. So to have a standard, you should have a political program. So it's a matter of our decision, what we prefer to have. By now, we prefer not to talk about these things, more or less. So we ignore. And I have a proof for you. All of you have at least once taken in their hand a euro paper money. In the euro paper money, there is only one word with 3 alphabets. That word is euro. Now, compare the paper money of Poland, compare the paper money of Switzerland, compare the paper money of China or for Canada. There is also written central bank or something like that in the official languages of the state. But can you imagine a euro with 24 writings? It's not feasible. So what was the solution? Only the acronym of the European Central Bank. But that means that the language policy of Europe is a taboo. It's not a solution. We are in a laissez-faire thing, okay? We do not want to delve into it because it's too sensitive. Of course, that's my opinion. Debatable. Well, it's not taking the hat of the professor away, okay? So that's really my personal opinion. So Esperanto in that case, if we were aware of that problem, could have a chance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I would just like to comment on the comments of our friend here. And I think that Esperanto, I'm an Esperantist, and you mentioned Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. I think Esperanto works much better in the field of Gemeinschaft as an international community, not as a competitor of English. English functions in a very different way. It's a language of powerful states, and you can use it in airports and so on, and hotels. You cannot really do that with Esperanto, but Esperanto is very useful in other ways. Once you enter into the global Esperanto community, it can function very, very well, and you can make lots of friends, and you can make lots of contacts and do lots of things with Esperanto once you get into this network, this community. So I think it's wrong to see Esperanto as trying to compete with English, or that it should compete with English or Arabic or whatever other national languages or international languages based on nation states, on ethnic groups. That's one point. And the other point you mentioned about loan words from languages like Arabic, and that Esperanto is mostly European. Well, one observation I have is that if you try to have an international language that is proportional and has vocabulary and even grammar from all different groups, it's going to be a complete mess. It doesn't work. Yes. You need to have a language that is consistent internally, and then it can function. And for example, Japan, where I lived for 2 years, has a very active, very big Esperanto movement. There's very little Japanese in Esperanto in the language, but the Japanese Esperantists are very devoted to it, very enthusiastic, and they even like the fact that it is largely European, and it gives them a gateway into other European languages. So I think that this issue that Esperanto does not, well, it doesn't have many Chinese words, so how are Chinese going to be interested? Well, just go to China, and you will meet thousands of Esperantists in China who are very enthusiastic about the language. So this is a non-issue, I think.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I agree with you. I'm a social linguist. So in order to prove a bit this kind of what is the language representation of Esperanto among the Esperantists, the main hypothesis is exactly what he was saying. So the contrast between Esperanto and English is seen as Esperanto as lingvo de amikeco, language of friendship, while English as a business language, more or less. This, it seems to be, but it's still a pilot study because we need a lot of data for that. But we can say that this is the representation that we found normally. And also this relies, again, with the two concepts of Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. As a Gemeinschaft, it works. It works since 1905. It is interesting because from the outside, people do not care about the culture. I tried to show it to you something about that, because I think this is important, and to realize with the first question by the old lady here, as she said, we do not teach well that. That's true in a sense, because we have to teach more our tradition and our history. There are 130 years of Esperanto as a living language. So it's not the same now as in Zamenhof's time. As a fluent Esperanto speaker, when I read Zamenhof's works, I can find some archaisms, for example. So the language is evolving, it's developing. And this is normal. That is a proof that the language is alive.
Mi ŝatus aldoni ankoraŭ unu aspekton. Mi estas persono kiu uzas kan Esperanton kaj anglan, sed ankaŭ laŭ profesio mi estas psikologo.
Okay. I would like to add another aspect. I use English and Esperanto, and also from a professional point of view, I am a psychologist.
Do mia persona sperto, kiun dividas ankaŭ multajn miaj geamikoj, estas, ke dum mi uzas Esperanton, mi havas profundan kaj gravan por mi senton uzi lingvon, kiu apartenas al mi, mian propran lingvon.
As a personal experience, I feel a personal bound when I speak Esperanto with the other friends. It's something that's my language. I feel belonging to it. That's my personal aspect. Now the professional.
Ne, okay. Tio estas kaj profesia, kaj persona.
Okay. Both personal and professional, sorry.
Tiu sento uzi mian propran lingvon.
Yes, this is both personal and professional. I feel to use my own language.
Yes, my own.
Okay.
Kiam mi estas uzanta anglan lingvon, mi havas tiun sperton, ke mi uzas ies lingvon, kvazaŭ prunteprenitan, kaj eĉ kiam mi parolas kun homoj, al kiuj angla ne apartenas.
While when I use English, it seems that I use others' language. Almost I'm stealing the language of someone else. And so I do not feel really comfortable, even when I speak with non-native speakers sometimes. Vi povas ankaŭ traduki de vi mem. You can also translate yourself. You are bilingual.
Ne, tamen mi ne tiom lertas kun angla. Kiel estas dirite por mi, kiel psika sento ti estas tre grava.
That's not, I prefer not to do because I'm not so expert in English. For the point of view of the psyche, the mind, this is very, very important for me. Dankon, thank you. This is also very interesting, this point of view. Let's add some details on that. I think that your experience can be shared by a lot of Esperanto speakers, maybe not in such crystal clear description, but that's for your professional background. But I feel the same, for example. If I may use a metaphor, because that's a bit tricky, you know. You know a toothbrush. You use a toothbrush to clean your teeth, right? Imagine that when you are speaking Esperanto, it's like your second toothbrush. You have your mother tongue or many mother tongues and another toothbrush that you use for traveling. It's compact, so it fits because you can't have a lot of baggage with you because you're traveling. So that's my experience. I travel a lot. So you have at home a long toothbrush, and for traveling a small toothbrush, but it's your own, so you have more than one. Then imagine going to some other's house, and you have to clean your teeth with some other's toothbrush, and you have to put in your mouth. That's this kind of sentiment, you are uncomfortable with that. I think this is yes? Okay. Just to explain, because it's a difficult concept.
I was impressed by the person who commented just now that when she speaks Esperanto, it's like something natural, and when she speaks English, it's like stealing a language. What I wanted to say, you specified that the Zamenhof made a clear difference that Esperanto is an international language. So I have a question of clarification from what I have seen from your quotes, what he said to European diplomats and what he said on nationalism. It seems that he is nevertheless rejecting nationalism. He said that the nationalism of the strong is something, nationalism of the weak is unwise. And, but in order to keep this international, you need to have nations and to have communications between nations. So from my point of view, it's not necessarily to say that Esperanto is an international language, because it implies keeping nationalism as a given and having this dualism of speaking Esperanto and speaking a national language. So how important is this definition of Esperanto language as an international language? Because it implies, from my point of view, keeping nationalism and national language as a given and not as a social construction, as we are accustomed to say.
I mentioned before that there were two different ideologies, the Swiss and the French. The French won. That means that it's normal to speak about Polish Esperantists, Dutch Esperantists, Italian Esperantists, Catalan Esperantists, and so forth. So there is not a contradiction here. But it's interesting that Zamenhof was a bit more radical. Okay? But Zamenhof is not the Esperanto movement. I mean, his idea, which I try to do. So he was a good patriot. So he was in favor of nationalities, but not in favor of nationalisms. It's a nuance, okay? It's a tricky point. It's a very, very subtle point, sorry. There's so many languages in my mind now. And so, but all his plan, which was called Homaranismo, okay, this kind of failed, in a sense. As a political program, as it reminded what remains now as his ethical, individual idea, which is the internal idea. That means that you will not find xenophobic people among Esperanto speakers. Because if you go to Esperanto, you cannot really believe that because of God or because of the blood or because of whatever you want, your nationality is superior of the other without any questioning, okay? So that's a great jump of Esperanto, and that remains in the Esperanto culture. I don't know if it was clear, because you raised very difficult questions, and in 20 seconds it's very difficult to answer.
Okay, we would have, okay.
Good evening. To improve communication in Europe, do you think it would be necessary to establish a European language? And if yes, which language? And do you think that Esperanto can play a role in a European language?
Okay, let us, again, I put aside the toga, the gown, okay? Not as a professor, because There are two different things. You are asking me my personal opinion. It's very important that I'm not representing anybody. It's only myself. Okay, that's, I think, it's important to underline. Well, I'm a bit worried of the future of the European Union. I think we are between the Scylla of nationalism and the Charybdis of austerity. We need a third way. That's my personal idea, okay? I think I'm not the only one in Europe, and in such a setting, it will be very nice to have one language that unites us respecting the others. So, to have such language, we should have a neutral language in the sense that it cannot be one of the official languages of the European Union linked with nation states. We can think about Esperanto, of course. Some other people propose Latin. There are groups that speak in Latin. I'm not in favor of that for two technical reasons. The first one is that Latin is linked with the Catholic Church, so I cannot think that traditional Orthodox countries and Protestant countries can adopt Latin. And the second point is that Latin has two pronunciations, restituta and ecclesiastica. I have to use both. It's a little anecdote. When I quote, for example, when I talk to my advanced students, I let them read the original Latin text by Leibniz about the philosophical universal language. When I talk in Italy, I have to use the ecclesiastica, otherwise they don't understand. When I talk in Amsterdam, I have to talk with the restituta, otherwise they do not understand. I can assure to you it's very difficult to have the same text and have two different pronunciations. So I feel that it could be possible to revitalize Latin. After all, modern Hebrew was revitalized. Why not? It could be possible, but I think it will be more productive to have Esperanto, sincerely speaking. There is also one colleague whose name is Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He is a scholar living in America, I don't remember the university now, of African heritage. And he switched from English to Swahili as his literary language, and he wrote a very nice and influent book in the field called Decolonizing the Mind. In 1984, if I remember correctly, but you can check in Wikipedia and tell me if I'm wrong or not. And the point is that he proposed Swahili as the federal European language in order to because it's distant from all the other European languages, and in that way we can finally, as Europeans, say sorry for the colonialism in Africa. So it is an extreme position, but if you think about the line of reasoning, it's not absurd, in a sense. Having said that, I would prefer Esperanto.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Gobbo. And the rest of the questions will have to be asked outside, unfortunately, because we have to finish. Thank you again.
Thank you.